And I want to share my screen too.
Is Michael with you or anybody else?
No, Michael is in Kansas City because his father-in-law died. And so the funeral was on Friday, so he's there for a few more days. And Arnie Greenland, he's back from his vacation, but he wasn't at Minyan today. A question I want to just throw out there, that I know that the bestiality topic was kind of weird, and I'm happy to go on to avoid the bestiality and move on with the topic of in Avodah Zarah, and that would be to go on to this page, which would be page 131, instead of page 129 where we left off, and that will finish the bestiality topic and on to other things. Or we could also, if you wanted to, explore the idea of switching tractates. So before we continue here with the red S, which I'm voting that we skip the rest of bestiality and just go on, that I'm still also, if we wanted to explore a totally different tractate, I'm up to that too. So any thoughts?
What would be the new tractate?
Right. So I don't know what the new tractate would be. I guess I would vote for something in either Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Batra, something about civil law, something we hadn't discussed yet over the past years. That could be either that or something from Sanhedrin, which would deal with courts and capital punishment or something like that. Also something that we hadn't discussed before. So that I would throw out there, as I'm sorry to gum up the works by doing this, but offline somebody said something to me that possibly people might be thinking that we need a new topic. So it's not like anybody approached me directly about that. It was just, I mean, all those people, just one person mentioned to me that it might be a good idea to bring it up for discussion again. So
I'm enjoying bestiality.
What about the tractate?
Yeah, thank you. I set you all up.
Yes, for that. If we do leave bestiality, Joan, will you summarize what the past 2 pages were?
Oh, yeah, the last 2 pages is about
We might stay with
how young a cow has to be till to do bestiality with it.
I liked the civil law when we did that, lost items, contracts. I like that. That's my prayer. I'll do anything.
Okay. Anybody else have a strong feeling either way?
I heard my first joke with the words Avodah Zarah in it. I won't do it justice, but let me try. So a American military young rabbi is sent far, far away to the far corners of the earth to serve whatever soldiers are out there. And well, he's just surrounded. There's no Jewish community. There's nothing Jewish related out there except for him. And so the Jewish Welfare Board is very concerned, my goodness, how are you maintaining your Judaism? Are you doing any learning? And the young rabbi says, sure, I'm learning Avodah Zarah every single day. Thanks.
That's good. All right, I see Michael Gross just joined us. And Michael, our condolences to you and the family for your father-in-law. And so we're just talking about whether to continue in Avodah Zarah or to switch tractates altogether, because somebody mentioned to me offline that it's people might be thinking that it's time to change topics. So I've only heard from one person to say to change. Going once, going twice. Okay, so we'll keep going here. So we're on page 131 then, with this red S, the next topic in the Mishnah about dealing with non-Jews and leaving your animals in an inn overnight there. So, well, there's a little midrash here about the Gemara further analyzes the episode involving the cows sent by the Philistines. So let's see what this is just for a second. Although. Okay, so it's the cows sent by the Philistines is this, and they sacrificed the cattle as a burnt offering unto the Lord. From 1 Samuel. This is the topic. How can you buy an animal from a non-Jew and use it as offer it as a sacrifice if it's assumed that bestiality was performed on it by the non-Jews? So they sacrificed the cattle as a burnt offering unto the Lord. Rabbi Yochanan explained that although in that incident the cattle had been owned by the Philistines, they were less than 3 years old, and was therefore presumed that the Philistines had not engaged with bestiality with them. So in other words, a cattle younger than 3 years old are not assumed to have bestiality done with them, and that's why it's okay to use the animal for an offering. So the Gemara further analyzes the episode involving the cows sent by the Philistines. The verse states, and the cattle took the straight way on the way to Beit Shemesh. They went along the highway, lowing as they went. Okay, so the cattle took the straight, vayisharna. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the word vayisharna? Because the word yashar, yud, shin, resh, means straight. So what does that mean that they took the straight way? Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Meir, it means they recited a song. So not yashar, but shir. And Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia says, that Rav says it means that they straightened, yishru, their faces so that they were opposite the ark and recited a song. So this is either they were singing or they turned around while they were singing so that they're not facing the ark and singing. The Gemara asks, and what song did they recite? Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Meir, they recited the song that follows the verse. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord. So Exodus 15 is the song at the sea that the people sang after the sea was parted, leaving Egypt, and then once the Israelites got through, then the water came back and drowned the Egyptians. So the chapter 15 of Exodus is that song. So the rabbis are suggesting that's the song that the Israelites are singing here in bringing the ark to Jerusalem and about to offer the cattle as sacrifice that the Philistines gave them. And Rabbi Yochanan himself says that it was, and on that day shall you say, give thanks unto the Lord, proclaim his name, declare his doings among the peoples, make mention that his name is exalted. Okay, so it's either Exodus 15 or Isaiah 12. And Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says that it was an orphaned psalm, that is, a psalm whose author and the event to which it makes reference are not specified. The psalm begins with, a psalm, O sing unto the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have wrought salvation for him. This happens to be one of the psalms, I think, in Kabbalat Shabbat, the service on Friday night. Rabbi Elazar says that it was a psalm beginning with, the Lord reigns, let the people tremble. Also, so either Psalm 98 or Psalm 99, one of those psalms that happens to be in Kabbalat Shabbat. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says that it was a psalm beginning, the Lord reigns, he is clothed in majesty, which is the psalm for Friday. Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha says they did not recite a verse found in the Bible, but rather the following song, sing, sing, acacia, ascend in all your glory, overlaid with golden embroidery, exalted by the book of the palace and magnificent with jewels. The song alludes to the Ark of the Covenant, which was made of acacia wood and covered with gold. The expression Book of the Palace is a reference to the Torah scroll that was placed in the Ark. So how Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha said that they sang this song, which is not from the Bible, how would he know that? That would be the question. And what did Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha write this song himself, or is this an ancient song? We don't know. So let's see if the Gemara talks about it. Rav Ashi teaches this statement of Rabbi Yitzchak in relation to this verse. And it came to pass when the ark set forward that Moses said, "Rise up, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered," from Numbers chapter 10. The Gemara asks, what did the Jewish people recite at this juncture? Rabbi Yitzchak says they recited, "Sing, sing, acacia, ascend in all your glory." So that's the verse. Okay, so now they're going to be talking about this. Apropos the mention of the term devir, the Gemara, so devir is back here, the book of the palace, devir. Apropos the mention of the term devir, the Gemara discusses its etymology. Rav said, on what basis do the Persians call a book, sifra, by the term devir? They derive it from here. Now the name of devir beforehand was Kiryat Sefer, from Judges 1. Since the name devir was changed to Kiryat Sefer, the Persians referred to a sifra, that is a book, as devir. So that's interesting. The note here, on language, the Middle Persian word dibir refers to a scribe. Several commentaries have discussed whether the text here should read safra, a scribe, or sifra, a book. Okay, so the thing here is how the rabbis could think that the Persian language goes back to the Bible. They might be. So I'm not sure what in other words, the rabbis wouldn't think that Latin, the language of the Roman Empire, is from the Bible, or that Greek is from the Bible. I don't think they make a similar discussion, have a similar discussion about the origin of words, but they do that about Persian. And it's possible because there are a couple of Persian words in the Bible in the book of Esther. Maybe the rabbis, because of that, think that a lot of the Persian language is biblical or related to Hebrew. So they're relating the word devir to this word in the book of Judges. That could be the source of this Persian word. Just one more paragraph about this. The Gemara examines the etymology of another term coined by the Persians. Rav Ashi said, on what basis do the Persians call a menstruating woman by the term dashtana? It is from here a verse in which Rachel claims to be a menstruating woman, for the manner of women is upon me, derech nashim li. The word dashtana is a shortened verb form of the phrase derech nashim. Okay, so another example of how the rabbis claim that some Persian words come from Hebrew. All right. The Gemara cites a series of expositions with regard to what is called the Book of Yashar. So there are, just a context here, there is a reference to some outside of the Torah book called the Book of Yashar. And that the reference to it comes from the book of Numbers, in which it says that the rest of the account of what happened in this war against either the Moabites or the Ammonites is written in the book of Yashar. So the Torah refers to this outside of the Torah book from the time of the Torah. And so the rabbis now are, because there was this reference to this verse about from Numbers, Vayihi bin Sarah Ha'aron, what did the people sing when bringing the ark to Jerusalem? This section is also thought to be taken from that book of Yashar. So the Gemara cites a series of expositions with regard to what is called the Book of Yashar. The verse states, "And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the nation had avenged themselves of their enemies. Is this not written in the Book of Yashar?" So from Joshua 10, the Bible class is familiar with this, the Friday class, because we just finished reading the book of Joshua there. So in this battle, which is among a series of battles in which Joshua led the Israelites to conquer the land of Israel, in order to have enough time to finish this one particular battle, Joshua calls out to the sun to ask it to stay still. So that's a classic miracle that's from the book of Joshua, and the sun does stand still so that the Israelites can have enough light to finish the battle. So the verse states that isn't this written, that this account of this miracle, isn't it also written in the book of Yashar? So the Gemara asks, what is the book of Yashar? Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says this is Genesis, which is the book of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were called righteous, Yesharim, as it is stated, "Let me die the death of the righteous," Yesharim. So one idea is the book of Yashar is Genesis, but the idea of the sun standing still is not written in the book of Genesis. The Gemara asks, and where is it alluded to in Genesis that the sun would stand still for Joshua? The verse states in reference to Ephraim, who is Joshua's ancestor, right? Joshua is the representative of the tribe of Ephraim, as the one of the 12 scouts who went to scout out the land of Israel. So Joshua is from the tribe of Ephraim. The verse states in reference to Ephraim, who was Joshua's ancestor, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. The Gemara asks, when will he become a multitude of nations? He became a multitude of nations at the time when the sun stood in place for Joshua, as it's written, and the sun stayed in the midst of the heaven and hastened not to go down for an entire day. All right, so that's a little midrash there, kind of a way big stretch to say that this verse from Genesis 48 alludes to the sun standing still in the sky, and therefore the book of Yashar is the book of Genesis. The Gemara inquires, and how much time elapsed before the sun finally set? Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said that it took 24 hours. It traveled across the sky for 6 hours and stood still for 6 hours, and again traveled 6 hours and stood still for 6 hours, so that the entire matter lasted the duration of an entire day. So in other words, there were 24 hours of sunlight that, according to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, that's how that miracle worked. Rabbi Elazar said that it lasted 36 hours. The sun traveled for 6 hours, stood still for 12 hours, and again traveled 6 hours and stood for 12 hours, so that the accumulated time of its suspension was that of an entire day.
Dumb question.
Yes, Bess?
If the sun is standing still, how do you know it's 12 hours or 6 hours?
Okay. So,
I'm serious.
I know, and I'm laughing because you're making this midrash as if it's science, and it's not. It's just the rabbis are trying to explain, for some whatever reason, why they need to, how many hours was the sun standing still. So yes, the problem is, if the only way to tell hours is by using a sundial, then how do you know how long the sun has been staying still for? So you're right that you don't know. But then again, you're not supposed to shoot down a midrash with logic, because it's not meant to be logical. It's like that midrash that a lot of us skip in the Haggadah, right before we do the taking the drops of wine out of the listing the 10 plagues. So right before that, how many plagues were there actually? Were there 10 plagues? Were there 50 plagues? Were there 250 plagues? Because how to count the words in the verse and how many miracles does each word represent? So it's not logical. It's just the rabbis saying, glorifying God. We think there were 10 plagues, but actually there were 250, and how extra glorious was God in providing these signs and wonders for the Israelites in Egypt. So how extra glorious was this miracle? 20, you think it's 24 hours, I think it's 36 hours that the sun stood still. Okay, so right, so Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said 48 hours elapsed before it set. It traveled 6 hours, stood for 12 hours, and traveled 6 hours, stood for 24 hours, as it stated, and the sun stayed in the midst of the heaven, and hastened not to go down for an entire day. By inference, it could be understood that initially it was not suspended for an entire day. Rather, at first, it stood still for 12 hours and was later suspended for an entire day. There are those who say, so what was it? 12 hours, 36 hours, or 48 hours? There are those who say that these sages do not disagree over how much time had elapsed before the sun set. Rather, they disagree with regard to the additional time by which the day was extended. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said 24 hours were added to that day because the sun traveled 6 hours and stood 12 hours, and again traveled 6 hours and stood for another 12 hours, which meant that its standing time lasted for an entire day. Rabbi Elazar said that 36 hours were added. It traveled 6 hours, stood for 12, then traveled for 6 and stood for 24. It's with regard to the second suspension that the verse states, and hasten not to go down for an entire day. Rab Shmuel Bar Nachmani said the time the sun stood in place was 48 hours in total. The sun traveled 6, stood 24, then traveled another 6, stood for another 24. His reasoning is that the verse juxtaposes the sun's suspension to its motion. Just as the sun is in motion for an entire day, so too its suspension was for an entire day. It's taught, just as the sun stood still for Joshua, so too the sun stood still for Moses and for Nakdimon ben Gurion. So, Nakdimon ben Gurion, possibly mentioned by Josephus, Nakdimon ben Gurion, whose Hebrew name was Boni, is described in several sources as one of the wealthiest residents of Jerusalem at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. Rashi explains that the miracle referred to here is the episode related in the tractate Ta'anit, in which Nakdimon prayed for the sun to continue shining after it should have set, in order to allow him to repay a loan that was due by the end of the day. Okay, so that cryptic story about Nakdimon is brought here to this story here about the sun standing still. So just as the sun stood still for Joshua, so too the sun stood still for Moses and for Nakdimon ben Gurion. It's known that it stood still from Joshua from a verse. And it's known that it stood still for Nakdimon ben Gurion by tradition, right? The story from the side there. From where do we derive that it stood still for Moses as well? The Gemara answers it's derived by means of a verbal analogy between the terms I will begin and I will begin. The Gemara elaborates. It's written here with regard to Moses, I will begin to deliver the dread of you and the fear of you upon the peoples. And it's written there with regard to Joshua, I will begin to magnify you. And Rabbi Yochanan says it's derived from a verbal analogy between the words delivered and delivered. It's written here with regard to Moses, I will begin to deliver the dread of you. And it's written there with regard to Joshua in a day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. Now, the reason they're doing this about saying that the sun stood still for Moses too, a lot in the book of Joshua is a lot that happens in the book of Joshua is related to events in the Torah, and that sometimes Joshua does things that Moses does, like crossing the Jordan River at the beginning of Joshua to enter the land of Israel is similar to the crossing of the sea leaving Egypt. And though the Jordan River is not as much of a miracle to have to cross as the Red Sea was, it's still described in a similar way. And there are other things like the Passover that's observed in in the land of Israel for the first time, and other things. There's lots of things in the book of Joshua that are related. What Joshua does, similar to what Moses does. So if Joshua has the sun stand still, then perhaps the rabbis are thinking, then Moses would have had to make the sun stand still too, because how could Joshua do something that Moses didn't do? Okay. Um, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that there's no need for a verbal analogy, as you can learn this idea from the verse itself. This day will I begin to deliver the dread of you and the fear of you upon the peoples that are under the whole heaven, who, when they hear the report of you, shall tremble and be in anguish of you. When was the fulfillment of the prophecy that all the nations shall tremble and be in anguish because of you? It was at the time when the sun still stood still for Moses. The Gemara raises an objection. After the sun stood still, the verse states, and there was no day like that before it or after it in Joshua. So in other words, that was a unique experience in Joshua. How can we say now that it stood still for Moses before Joshua, when Joshua says it never happened before? And if there was no day comparable to it, how can it be asserted that the sun stood still for Moses as well? The Gemara answers, if you wish, say that the number of hours the sun stood still for Moses were not as many as in the case of Joshua. And if you wish, so in other words, what happened for Joshua is still unique because it only was a little bit for Moses. And if you wish, say instead, when the sun stood still for Moses, there were no hailstones, whereas in the case of Joshua, there were hailstones, as it's written, and it came to pass, as they fled from before the children of Israel, while they were in the descent of Beit Horon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them into Azekah, and they died. So the sun stood still, and there was a big hailstorm, whereas the sun stood still for Moses, and there was no hailstorm. Okay, so all that midrash there. Now, the Gemara cites another exposition with regard to the book of Yashar. It's written and said to teach the sons of Judah the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Yashar from 2 Samuel. So another reference to the book of Yashar, not just from Joshua, now here from 2 Samuel. The Gemara again asks, what's the book of Yashar? Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says this is the book of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are called righteous, as it's written with regard to them, let me die in the death of the righteous, and let my end be like this. Okay, so it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wrote the book of Yashar. The Gemara, yes, go ahead.
Is the word yeshiva, I don't know what it means. Is it related at all to?
No. So Yashar is Yud Shin Resh, which means straight, or it could also mean honest, or it's translated here as righteous. Yeshiva is Yud Shin Bet, and that's from the word to sit or to dwell. Okay. The Gemara analyzes the verse in Samuel. And where is it alluded to in Genesis that Judah must be taught to use the bow? The verse states, Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the nape of your enemies. The Gemara explains, what is the form of warfare that requires one's hand to be held opposite the nape? You must say that this is referring to the use of a bow. This is the referent of the verse in Samuel. So, hand opposite the nape. This phrase literally means hand against the nape. Rashi explains that this is a reference to the manner in which one pulls a bow to shoot an arrow. That is, by bringing back his drawing hand to his nape. I guess, I don't know, I don't use a bow and arrow, but I can picture that, holding the bow and then pulling the string back. And I guess you pull the string back all the way to your neck. This event, that is by bringing back his drawing hand to his nape. Alternatively, this expression is derived from the fact that the bow is a weapon used to slay fleeing enemies who turn their back or their nape on the attackers in order to escape. Accordingly, the archers can be said to be holding their hand against their enemy's nape. Okay, I think the first explanation would be better about pulling the string back as opposed to shooting at the fleeing enemy, because you're not shooting for their neck. the bigger target would be their whole body. But anyway, so that's the reference here. Judah, your brother shall praise you, your hand shall be on the nape of your enemies. And that's the reference to Judah using the bow that was in 2 Samuel. The Gemara cites a different interpretation. Rabbi Elazar says that the book of Yashar is the book of Deuteronomy. And why did they call it the book of Yashar? As it's written, and you shall do that which is right and good in the sight of the Lord. And where is it alluded to in Deuteronomy that Judah must be taught to use the bow? The verse states, and this for Judah, and he said, hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him in unto his people. His hands shall contend for him. What is the form of warfare that requires the use of 2 hands? You must say that this is referring to the use of a bow. This is the referent of the verse in Samuel. And so here's a picture here on the side of how this warrior is pulling the bow all the way back to his neck. Okay. The Gemara provides yet another explanation. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says that the book of Yashar is the book of Judges. And why did they call it the book of Yashar? As it is written, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And where is it alluded to in Judges that Judah must be taught to use the bow? The verse states, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know to teach them war. What is the form of warfare that requires teaching? You must say that this is referring to the use of the bow. This is the reference to the verse in Samuel. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that Judges 3:2 is written in reference to Judah? We derive it as it is written, the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall go up for us first against the Canaanites to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Okay. The Gemara cites, so on to a different topic. Now the Gemara cites another dispute between the same Amoraim, same rabbis of the time of the Talmud. The verse states, and the cook took up the thigh, and that which was upon it, ve'aleha, and set it before Saul. To what does the term, and that which was upon it, refer? Rabbi Yochanan says it refers to the thigh and the tail. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that the tail is referred to as, and that which was upon it? The reason is that the thigh supports the tail as it rests upon it. And Rabbi Elazar says, so this is Yochanan and Elazar, who we had before, so this is another Yochanan and Elazar dispute. The verse refers to the thigh and the breast, not the thigh and the tail. What's the reason that the breast is referred to as in that which was upon it? The reason is that one places the breast upon the thigh when it requires sacrificial waving and waves it. And Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says the verse refers to the thigh and the cap, that is the very top part of the leg. What's the reason that the cap is referred to as that which was upon it? It's because it's referring to the cap that stands above the thigh. Okay, now back to the topic at hand. A woman staying in an inn overnight. The Mishnah teaches that a woman may not seclude herself with Gentiles. The Gemara asks, what are we dealing with? If we say that we are dealing with a woman who secludes herself with one Gentile, is this permitted in the corresponding situation involving a Jew? But didn't we learn in a Mishnah from the tractate Kiddushin, one man may not seclude himself even with 2 women? It's certainly forbidden for one man to be secluded with one woman. Rather, the Mishnah is referring to a case in which a woman secludes herself with 3 Gentiles. The Gemara asks, is this permitted in the corresponding situation involving Jews steeped in sexual immorality? But didn't we learn in a Mishnah, but one woman may be secluded with 2 men? And Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says they taught this halacha only with regard to men of fit morals. But with regard to those steeped in sexual immorality, she may not be secluded even with 10 men. There was an incident where 10 men carried a woman out of the city on a bier as though she were dead, and they engaged in intercourse with her. The Gemara answers no. The ruling of the Mishnah here is necessary in a case where the Gentile's wife is with him. The differences between the 2 rulings is that in the case of a Gentile, it's assumed that his wife does not guard him against sinning with another. But with regard to a Jew, his wife does guard him against sinning with another. All right, so this section says that Gentile men can't be trusted, and Gentile wives allow their men to do whatever they want to do, which is not the case for Jewish women regarding their husbands, that they have control over their husbands. Okay. The Gemara teaches that a woman may not seclude herself with a Gentile due to the concern that they might engage in illicit sexual relations. The Gemara challenges, and let us derive that a woman may not seclude herself with a Gentile due to the concern about bloodshed. Maybe that's the reason that we're worried about. We're not worried about sexual immorality taking place, but we're worried about her life. That a Jewish woman alone with a Gentile man could be murdered. The Gemara cites two responses. Rabbi Yirmiyah says we're dealing with a distinguished woman whom Gentiles will not kill as they are fearful of her status. Right? So a Jewish woman who has status, even Gentiles would be afraid of causing any harm to her. Nevertheless, there is a concern with regard to illicit sexual relations. Rav Idi Bar Avin says a woman carries her weapons upon her. In other words, there is no need to be concerned that a woman might be killed by Gentiles. Rather, the very fact that she is a woman protects her, as they would most likely rape her and not kill her. So a woman doesn't have to worry about bloodshed. She would have to worry about rape, but she would never have to worry about being killed. That's not really any kind of source of comfort that you can that a woman can take from this, but in dangerous times, at least women have that extra thing about them that the first thing that's going to happen to them is not going to be murdered, whereas a man would have to worry about being among Gentiles and being murdered because there's nothing else that a Gentile might want to do with a man. The Gemara asks, what's the practical difference between these two answers? The Gemara answers the difference between them is with regard to a woman who is distinguished among men due to her political position, but it's not distinguished among the women. That is, she is unattractive. But according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, there is no concern that she will be killed, as she is distinguished, nor is there a concern that they will engage in illicit sexual relations. Therefore, it would be permitted for her to seclude herself with them. So this is clearly a pretty sexist kind of statement, let alone before that a woman doesn't have to worry about being killed because she'll just be raped. But if she's ugly, then she doesn't have to worry about being raped at all. Not exactly a great statement here to read. Therefore, it would be permitted for her to seclude herself with them. By contrast, as Ravidi Bar Avin stated, his explanation in general terms, he evidently holds that the concern of illicit sexual relations always applies, regardless of the woman's appearance. Yay for Idi Bar Avin, who is not judgmental of a woman's appearance. I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing about it, but in the scheme of things, this whole thing is kind of ridiculous about what women should be worried about, and it's from the perspective of men, of course, writing about women. So the whole context is anti-woman, and then continues to be anti-woman, and what they're suggesting here that could happen to women, and that actually a woman's appearance has something to do with the fact that she would be raped. And that's something that's still in American law today, right? That's still an issue when women charging men with rape, how difficult it is to have that charge stick, right? It's all about the motives of the woman, her appearance, and things like that. So so Laurie had asked why at those times will women be secluded with Gentiles. I'm not sure, Laurie, but I do think that at that time women had their own business and they could have traveled to the market in order to sell produce or to sell other like wool that maybe that a woman has spun or textiles that she could have woven on her loom, things like that. So a woman could travel by herself to the marketplace, and that traveling could involve more than one day, and she has to stay overnight somewhere. So it is based on reality that women could be traveling by themselves. So, and that's something that is timeless. Women always having to worry about traveling and what time of day it is and whether they're going to be safe or not. So, in that regard, the rabbis are correct in trying to ask, where is it? Is it assumed that Jewish women would be safe among Jewish men, and is it assumed that Jewish women would not be safe among Gentile men? So this section concludes here. The Gemara notes that it's taught in a Baraita in accordance with the opinion of Rav Idi bar Avin with regard to a woman, even though her protection accompanies her, that is, she is not in danger of being killed, she may not seclude herself with Gentiles because they are suspected of engaging in forbidden sexual relations. Okay. The Mishnah further teaches that a person may not seclude himself with Gentiles because they are suspected of bloodshed. So this is a man or a woman. You're not supposed to be alone with Gentiles because you're putting your life in your hand. The sages taught a Jew who encounters a Gentile on the road and continues his travels with him should position the Gentile to his right so that the Jew's dominant hand is closest to the Gentile, which will enable him to defend himself against a potential attack. Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, says, if the Gentile is armed with a sword, the Jew positions himself to his right, because a blade is usually carried on one's left side. But if the Gentile is armed with a stick, the Jew should steer him to his left, as a stick is usually carried in one's right hand. By walking on the same side as the Gentile's weapon, the Jew can best prevent him from drawing it. Okay, so nothing like conceal and carry, but rather in ancient times, you had your weapons clearly displayed in front of you. And if you're a right-handed person, the hilt for the sword would be on your left side. So you'd go across your body as a right-handed person to take the sword out like that. So you want to position yourself accordingly so that you're in the best place to defend yourself and you have enough time to defend yourself. Now, they're not saying anything about a knife instead of a sword. Is a dagger also on the left-hand side? Don't know. What about a gun if you're right-handed? Is the holster on the left side? Sometimes it's behind your back. Is it on your right side? I don't know. I have no idea where a gun should be holstered if you're right-handed. But so the rabbis are saying, but a stick, like your walking stick or any other stick, you're going to hold in your dominant hand. And also you should position yourself accordingly. So this is kind of like security tactics here. If you happen to be walking with a Gentile, position yourself accordingly so that you're safe. The Gemara continues, if the Jew and Gentile were ascending an incline or descending in a decline, the Jew should not be positioned below while the Gentile is above, so that the Gentile will not have the advantage of height if he decides to attack. Rather, the Jew should be located above while the Gentile is below, and the Jew should not bend down before him, lest the Gentile break his skull. Okay, so basic security teaching here about how to walk with a Gentile. Furthermore, if the Gentile asks him where he's going, the Jew should not extend the journey when relating his destination to him. That is, he should claim that he's traveling to a place beyond his actual destination in the manner that Jacob our father did to the wicked Esau. As it's written that Jacob said to Esau, "Let my Lord pass over before his servant, and I will journey on gently, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come unto my Lord, unto Seir." Okay, so just a little note here. First of all, the rabbis assume that Esau, the twin of Jacob, is always evil. And as I've talked in Torah study and in shul on Shabbat, just by reading the Torah, Esau is not such a bad guy. But according to the rabbis, Esau is arch evil. Not as bad as Haman, but almost in that regard. Because Esau, for the rabbis, is the ancestor of the Edomites first. King Herod is from the Edomites, and he wasn't such a great king of Israel. And the Roman Empire itself is said to be descended from Esau, and the Romans were terrible in treating Israel. And rabbis also say the Catholic Church, Christianity, is descended from Esau. So enemies, historic, generational enemies of the Jewish people are descended from Esau. So, and therefore, according to the rabbis, and therefore Esau is evil from his birth. So that when Jacob and Esau reunite, remember that Jacob got the blessing. He kind of schemed to get the blessing from Isaac instead of Esau. Esau was angry at Jacob. Jacob runs away, marries Rachel and Leah, has all the kids. So he's been away for 20 some odd years and is told by God, time to go back to the land of Israel to fulfill the covenant. So he's worried about meeting up with Esau. So it says there in Genesis 33, Esau says, "Let's go together. Let's travel together." And Jacob says, "No, I got all these people with me, all this cattle, all these herds, and I'm going all the way to Seir," which was a lie. He wasn't going to Seir. He was going to the land of Israel. The Gemara continues, and it is written subsequently, and Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built himself a house. Rather than meeting Esau in Seir, Jacob traveled to the nearer location of Sukkot. Telling a Gentile that one is traveling to a farther destination might cause the Gentile to defer his attack due to the assumption that he has a longer period of time to plan and execute it. As a result of the delay, the Jew has a better chance of reaching his true destination safely. So in other words, if a Gentile is traveling with you, you want to say, and let's say you're going to New York from here, and tell the Gentile you're going to Boston so that you, by the time you get to New York, the Gentile hasn't come up with the whole plan of how he's going to kill you. So it's kind of terrible in thinking here that the rabbis are thinking that Gentiles are always planning to kill a Jew. Perhaps there's a lot of experience that the rabbis had about Gentiles and the evil that Gentiles do to Jews. So it's possibly based on that, or it also could just be an anti-Gentile predilection of the rabbis, to the extent that they're saying that you can never trust a Gentile. You have to always assume the ultimate worse about the Gentile and the Gentile's motivations towards Jews. So it says a lot about our times today, about non-Jews and the rise of anti-Semitism today. Do we always assume that non-Jews hate Jews? I don't think so, but you can never tell on social media and whatnot. But do non-Jews want to kill Jews today? There was definitely a much dangerous time 1800 years ago in the time of the Roman Empire where Romans did kill Jews. So maybe this is justified. But again, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant to read. Okay. So let's stop here for today. We'll continue next time, and I'll let you know when that if we're meeting next Sunday. Assume that we're meeting next Sunday, but I will tell you regarding my daughter Elisheva and giving birth whether the schedule will be different. So wish everybody a good rest of the day. Just want to see what page we're on. 150. Okay. And I'll see you. Have a good rest of the week as well.
Too. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Take care, everybody.
Welcome back.